I believe in development, like giving people, if you're doing well, there's all sorts of ways to develop your career, and talking to people and understand like where do you want to be in 3, 5, 7, 10 years? Like where are you marching towards? And then finding opportunities. I love win-win opportunities where they get maybe different experiences. So sometimes it's vertical growth, sometimes it's horizontal growth and doing different things such that when they get to the next level, they're that much more effective. And oh, by the way, it's effective for us as a company because now you have people who really start to understand the adjacencies and the recommendations and the work they do is that much better because it reflects the realities of the overall business.
Awesome. I'm live with Ben Mand, CEO of Harmless Harvest. It's awesome to have you here today, Ben.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks a lot, Jon.
Yes, we got to chat a couple weeks ago. We got to see each other in person at Expo West about 2 weeks ago. You gave me some homework to try your new coconut yogurts and coconut smoothies, which I got to fulfill at Expo West. And, I've been a long time fan of the brand and I'm a coconut fiend. Love coconuts, especially the Thai ones. And I'm especially excited to kind of get into what you're building at Harmless Harvest and a lot of the cool and sustainable and innovative practices that you've implemented and integrated into the business. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, maybe for those out there that haven't heard of Harmless Harvest, I would love an introduction on the company and then also yourself and how you got to be involved with them.
Great. Happy to share a little bit more about Harmless Harvest. So Harmless Harvest was founded, we shipped our first product in 2011. It was actually founded in 2009 by Douglas and Justin, the founders. And what's interesting about Harmless Harvest is most founders have a product or a service or something that they already know what they want to do, and then they go about trying to figure out how they actually produce it or do it and then scale it. What's interesting about them is they had no idea what kind of product that they wanted to sell, but they knew the type of business that they wanted to run. And their whole philosophy was this notion of constructive capitalism. So not just investors benefit from the products or services that you sell, but everybody all the way along the supply chain, starting at the farm in our case, going all the way through. So they were actually in South America checking out all these different types of berries and looking at juices and stuff, and they were really acidic, and they wanted to cut that with some coconut water. And as they tried different coconut waters, they started to realize that, boy, there's a lot of really bad tasting coconut water out there. There has to be a better way to do coconut water. So that's actually where they got their inspiration, which is a very interesting story because I would have, they didn't even set out to do coconuts or coconut water. But in that process, they discovered, some pretty bad coconut water, and people were starting to realize the benefits of coconut water from a hydration standpoint. So, as an alternative to other sports hydration drinks. And so therein was their inspiration, and they then scoured the globe for where's the best coconut. They landed on the Nam Hom coconut out of Thailand. I've since, and my team, we've gone through and done an audit of all the different coconuts around the world, and we agree the Nam Hom is the best coconut. And then a different way of processing. So, most coconut waters, they just buy a blend of various coconut waters on the global market, and it's a pretty cheap input. Whereas we focus on a very specific coconut, the Nam Hom, which is the best one. And then they would thermally process, most coconut waters thermally process, put it into Tetra Pak or whatever it may be. We actually have a proprietary process where we cold filter our product. So there's no thermal process on our coconut water. And that's how we protect kind of the great original taste of that Nam Hom coconut.
So you have a different process. It's not just that the coconut is unique in terms of where you're sourcing it, but also the process of actually shipping it out and getting it to consumers' hands is also different. And then
Yeah.
something else that I noticed, I think you all had the first brand that I noticed it with, is that the coconut water is sometimes actually pink.
That is correct. So it starts out clear. So clearly it does not come out of the coconut pink. It did start out clear. But over time, the enzymes are interacting with the polyphenols. And so it starts to turn pink. And if you think of an apple, if you cut an apple and you let it sit out, you start to see it starting to turn brown. It's and you know, thankfully, pink is a beautiful color and an easier color to market than muddy brown. So, you know, we got lucky in that regard. But yeah, it's just and the product, because we haven't thermally processed it, the enzymes and all that type of stuff are active and interacting.
Yeah, and then so you mentioned the founding story. When does Ben Mand enter the picture, and why did you get involved?
Yeah. So I joined, it'll be 5 years in June, July. And I joined for a few reasons. One, I was definitely looking for this type of opportunity, but for me, I wanted to go to a business, one that was responsible. So I fundamentally believe that business can be a force for good, and I wanted to, run a business that I felt could really not only drive financial success, but really make a positive impact in communities and environment. And certainly Harmless checks that box. I also wanted a product that I loved. I already knew Harmless, I already drank Harmless, I loved Harmless Harvest, so it was a big check mark there. And then the final aspect that I really looked at was, does this business, like in my assessment, what does it really need, and is that something that I really bring as a skill set? Can I really drive positive impact there? And it was a check mark in that regard as well. So yeah, I joined about 5 years ago. um Took over, first of all, an amazing business, but an amazing business that had some challenges that we had to work on. So you have a great product, and I would say like a cult like following. Like, people love our coconut water, but the business was not at all profitable, was not growing all that much, and had a very challenging supply chain that was not scalable, a lot of hand labor all the way throughout. And just not fully living, like employee engagement, the team and stuff like that. There were a lot of things that just needed some work, and we were selling basically 3 to 4 different sizes of coconut water and nothing else. And when you think about it, we were buying this coconut, we were processing 40 million coconuts, and taking the water out and then sending the husk, the meat, and everything to the landfill, which first of all isn't very harmless. Excuse me, very harmless. But second of all, certainly isn't very financially smart, in the sense that we're buying the most expensive coconut in the world, and we're not even using the coconut meat out of it. We're not figuring out a way to use the husk. So certainly a lot of opportunity. And that became one of our first priorities, is how do we use that entire coconut? So, one of the first mandates really was about zero waste. And from an innovation standpoint is, how do we then start using that coconut meat for other products?
Yeah. How, out of curiosity, how much is a coconut when you're buying that many in bulk, approximately per coconut?
That's a great question. It really depends on the time of the year. So, it's a seasonal harvest. So we do harvest year round, but the bulk of the coconuts are harvested in the fall. So, October through December is probably the key season. I would say shoulder would be kind of August, September, and then January through March, maybe even into April, can be very good or not. It just depends on the moisture levels. So one of the things is we track moisture levels very carefully, and to understand, because we know it's one of the highest signals and most highly correlated with the yields, right? So the number of coconuts and the amount of water per coconut. But yeah, like May, June can be 5, 6 times the cost as it is in November. Just to give you a sense of like how how much the
Because there's
pricing
less supply.
swings. Less supply. Yep. But what's important is like most others. So I would say one of our biggest competitors is our companies coming in and buying the coconut, and they do what's called a diamond cut coconut. So they clean it all up, and sometimes if you go into the produce department at your local store, you might see these coconuts with a straw or something like that, and you can buy the whole coconut. So that's considered a diamond cut coconut or a polished coconut. Um, those purchasers, as well as like some of the other local companies in the market, they only stay in and buy when the coconuts are cheap. But what's interesting and important to understand as a Fair for Life company is farmers have coconuts year round, and they need a market and a place to sell their coconuts year round. So we do buy. So even when it's 6 times, 7 times more expensive than it is during, the fall, we still buy year round. Now, we'll try to buy more in the fall. And certainly like, we, at the end of the day, we're a business as well. But we also recognize farmers need a marketplace for their coconuts. So we buy year round. We usually shut down for about 2 weeks to do maintenance and capital installs and things like that in the factory, which is normal protocol. But other than that, we buy year round.
And are these coconut farms that you're buying from? And are you buying from multiple different farms? And is there ever a interest in actually vertically integrating the business and owning the farms?
Yeah, so we buy from either directly the farms and the farmers themselves in some cases, as well as from collection centers. So in these regions, there are collection centers where those collection centers, they work with farmers, they bring the coconuts there, and then they debunch, they do some things that usually it's like a bunch of coconuts, maybe 12 to a bunch. They'll take them off the bunch, kind of do the basic cleaning, and then they sell them to us or they sell them to others. So we buy from both. It's a good question. Would we ever vertically integrate? The way it stands right now, based on Thai law, we cannot own and run farms. So as a foreign national company, we can't do that. So, we have set up our operations such that we can work with farmers. So I have 28 agronomists on staff. So they work with farmers on the principles of organic and regenerative organic. So we're transitioning all of our farms to regenerative organic practices. And so, we spend a lot of time with them, and we've had to, structure our company specifically there to even do those kinds of services. Because technically, as if you're purely a foreign company, you can't even do any of those types of activities. So we've set it up such that we can do that and help farmers. We have several folks who are specifically on compliance, so they aren't helping farmers with like how to transition regenerative. They're going in and constantly auditing farms to make sure that people are adhering to the principles and not using fertilizer or some type of thing that is not allowed.
Yeah, I was gonna. That's I love that you brought that up because I was gonna ask about that next. Is like the quality of the coconut, and you hear. I know there's environmental factors to consider, but for fruits like avocado, some people are like, oh, it has a rough skin around it, so it doesn't matter as much if it's organic or if it's or not from a health standpoint. And I've wondered about coconuts and whether when you're thinking about organic and regenerative, is it more an environmental reason or does it have to do with the health of the coconut? Does it impact anything in relationship to that?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is kind of that there's some people kind of sometimes adhere to this dirty dozen, right? So like certain, like a strawberry, for example, you're not peeling the outside of the strawberry, you're eating the whole strawberry. There's certain crops that maybe lend themselves to more pesticides and usage and things like that. Yeah, I wouldn't put coconuts into that dirty dozen. Certainly, I fundamentally, and I think many people are increasingly believing that just first and foremost from an environment standpoint, it doesn't make sense. The impact of the bees and to birds and things like that. When you stop using chemicals, you often see a return of a lot of insects and wildlife and things like that. So first and foremost from an environmental standpoint, but then also, yes, I fundamentally believe, the lack of pesticides and all these unnatural things in when you're growing, in my point of view, it yields a much better product that is, to me, the closest to nature you can be, the better off long term. Because I think we are only understand the tip of the iceberg as it relates to like all these environmental impacts and the types of things we do, how it really impacts human beings.
Last, just random curiosity question is, are the coconuts picked just like manually, or is there a machine that goes and gets them?
That's a great question. It is manual, actually. What's interesting is so the trees are not all that tall. So, it's we harvest a young coconut and it is from a younger tree. So this is a tree that, is anywhere from like 4-ish years old to maybe 15 to 20 years old. And there are three people involved in the harvesting. So there's one person who has this really, imagine a really long bamboo stick with a kind of a machete on the end that's a little hooked. And they saw, right? And then one other person has what is like a really long bamboo with a kind of a fork on the end that kind of holds it. And then we have canals between all of the trees. And once it saws off, the person with the long fork kind of just guides it to make sure it lands in the canal. And then the person in the canal is just walking through. It's not that deep, probably, 3 feet, 4 feet deep. That person is then walking, has a big kind of net, and they're just putting all those into the net, and then they're just dragging them along. And then they harvest, several rows, and then they get to the corner, and then there's a truck there, and then there's this whole process of pulling them out. And there's a person who's counting along the way, filling up the trucks, and then it goes to either the collection center or sometimes it comes directly to us.
Yeah. Seems so labor intensive. And it's also so interesting to me. Like, I went to Cambodia, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I went to a market there looking for coconut oil. And I saw there was like two coconut oils. And it's like the product is produced in and around these countries, and there's like two brands of coconut oil. And then you go to Whole Foods and there's 30 brands of coconut oil and coconut products. And I always wonder, like, where is the supply in these countries totally being exported to the United States?
In our case, so because we harvest a young coconut, it doesn't lend itself to oil or coconut milk because it's still young, so it hasn't developed all the oils and fats. So that is, but I can talk to the fact, like, there's certainly lots of coconut water, and you say this is, great coconut water. There are lots of local brands. So, it's you have access to the whole coconut. So people buy the whole coconut there locally, and or it's bottled and sold pretty immediately in a very perishable setting. So yeah, lots of coconut. In our case, there are lots of local products.
Yeah. I would love to dive into, so you mentioned, business wasn't necessarily as profitable as it could have been. The practices around the sustainability and the, zero waste wasn't really intact. So you get there and you have a CPG background. I believe you came from Plum Organics, was the last company you worked in? Yeah. And were you working in a sales and marketing role there or an operations role? I forget.
Yeah, I was on the revenue side. So innovation, marketing, mission, creative, all those departments.
So then you come into Harmless Harvest, and what do you decide to implement sort of first? And can you walk us through what that process looked like?
Yeah. So I did basically a 60-day assessment of just, spent time. I did some marketing activations where I was sampling products down in Santa Monica and, various events to get to interact with more and more consumers. I met with several key customers. I went to our farms, went to our co-packers, went to our factory, did all that to really understand what is the total supply chain, got to know the employees, and laid out what I felt were the five priorities, and shared with the company and the board that there are two things that are fundamentally most important. And if we do these two things really well, we'll be very, very successful. First and foremost was we have to use that entire coconut. It is obviously a very expensive coconut, and also just from a mission standpoint, our name is Harmless Harvest. So using that entire coconut was important. So from an innovation standpoint was how do we start leveraging that entire coconut in our products? And with that, like how do you start building, going beyond just pure coconut water and start building, as I call it, shoulders to the business? We need a line of products that really use coconut in many different ways that expands the usage occasions, expands the appeal from a consumer standpoint. That was the first priority. And the other priority that was critical was streamlining the supply chain. So getting to a finished good that we bring over from Thailand, extending that shelf life, working and investing in better quality. So making sure that we cool the product as fast as possible, doing all these types of things to make sure that we're protecting and safeguarding the quality of the product, because that is what really sets us apart.
And how's that process going?
Great. I would say today more than 20% of our sales are coming from things outside of just plain coconut
Oh,
water. Um, the simple things like I happen to be drinking right now are coconut water with aloe pulp. So, one of the products is just regular coconut pulp that we put in. So we still do the cold filtration, and then we inject in the coconut pulp. And in this case, now we inject in aloe pulp. So just finding different kind of, some people like it without pulp, some people like it with pulp. The aloe segment is a pretty sleepy segment. It's, products are typically pretty, it's, the first two ingredients are water and sugar, whereas this is just coconut water, no added sugar, and just the pulp from the aloe. So a very simple product, tastes delicious, but, you get the pieces of aloe. So doing stuff like that to launching a line of yogurts. So the yogurts which you tried at Expo West are amazing and do really well. So typically when you make yogurt, you start with a pre-pasteurized liquid. So cow's milk, sheep's milk, almond milk, you name it, whatever it may be. So it comes in, you add gums and stabilizers and culture it and pasteurize it. And, so you make your yogurt. What we do is we take that freshly scooped coconut meat, we puree that, a little bit of water, cultures, and a little bit of tapioca starch, and that's it. That's our plain yogurt. There's nothing else. So no gums, no stabilizers. And what's beautiful about it is like it's an upcycled ingredient. So in the past we would not have used that coconut meat. So we now use that coconut meat, and on top of that, because we're using the whole coconut, you're getting the fiber with it as well, because you're taking the whole, all the coconut meat. So it's got fiber in it and MCTs, which are those, the healthier fats. So, not many yogurts when you go to the shelf have a good source of fiber, which is something that's really unique and really beneficial of our yogurt.
how did you decide to do yogurt out of everything else you could have done? Was that a big decision for the team?
The healthier fats. So, not many yogurts when you go to the shelf have a good source of fiber, which is something that's really unique and really beneficial of our yogurt.
How did you decide to do yogurt out of everything else you could have done? Was that a big decision for the team?
That was absolutely a big decision. And this is like something to think about. If you're a founder or you're running a business and you're trying to think about like how do I grow? Where do I have a right to win? In beverage, we have a right to win. We have a really good set of core products. And now we've launched smoothies. So it's just the coconut water, the coconut meat from one coconut or about one coconut pureed together. That is just the plain one. And then you do chocolate where you just add cocoa and sea salt. We do mango where you just add mango puree. So simple, not, no gum stabilizers, no added sugar, a great simple product. So we have a right to win in beverage, and you can start using a lot of the coconut meat and a lot of things in beverage. Now you can't use it at the same rates as you do in yogurt, because yogurt is just 100% using our coconut meat, but it's a totally new category, and it's tough to break through and win in a new category. It's often a different buyer. It's a different part of the store. You don't have, the brand awareness in that set as you do in your original set. And, the cost to compete, dairy, plant-based dairy and yogurt is incredibly competitive. So it did weigh on us, right? And if you're going to enter into a new category, do you have a meaningful point of difference? And the reason we decided to move forward were for two reasons. One is we felt we had a meaningful point of difference. We make an absolutely delicious yogurt, because of this raw material that we have gives us a bit of an advantage there. Number one. And then number two was honestly from a mission standpoint, right? It was a really effective way to use the coconut meat and start balancing out, right? We have lots of need for water, and we need to if we're going to be responsible, we need to build a business that has equal need for the coconut meat as we do for the coconut water. And, from a overall using that whole coconut, from a mission standpoint, and then from a net consumer standpoint, are we really bringing something that is materially better? And it's expensive to compete there, and it's hard to break through. But I'm happy to say now, after a couple of years of doing it, we've been very successful.
Did it also have anything to do? I know you mentioned, I think when we originally chatted, that that Harmless Harvest is actually owned by one of the biggest CPG companies in the world, Danone, which I think some people might associate with yogurt as well. Did that play into the decision as well? That you had this big, you know, pioneer in the direct to or not direct to consumer, but in the yogurt world, kind of behind you.
Yeah, I mean, they were not a majority investor at that time, so they were just a number of investors at that time. So, did that factor in? Yeah, partially. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still accountable to results. And so, we had to believe first and foremost, can we be successful? Right? Does it work overall for the business? If it does, great. Now there's a bunch of like tiebreakers or further reasons why you would do it. And certainly from an investor standpoint, we had an investor who knew a thing or two about yogurt.
Yeah. And on the zero waste side, sustainability side, I was mentioning it to a friend about, this, everything that you're doing with the coconut meat and that, and they look back at me and they're like, but their coconut water is still in plastic bottles. How have you thought about that as a leader? I know that a lot of newer companies in and around the CPG space are also doing things now in aluminum cans or cans. And I know that's a place that you often do see also coconut water. Some of the cheaper alternatives that sometimes have added sugar are in cans. How do you think about sort of that element of the distribution and the sustainability?
Yeah. So just for those others, like they're using a either ultra high temperature, some sort of thermal process, and often that is done either in a Tetra Pak, or an aluminum can. Um, for us, it's a great question, and it is a constant issue that we are always looking for better solutions. What I would tell you is we years ago, and we each year, we reconvene with experts. We sat down with experts in packaging and we looked at greenhouse gas emissions and we looked at waste. And what is the best vessel to put our product in? And some of this was pretty surprising to me, I have to admit. Um, Glass and aluminum from a carbon impact and a climate change impact are bigger offenders than plastic. So aluminum, the amount of energy required from extraction and recycling and whatnot actually is quite significant and it's actually inferior to plastic. Glass, similar, more on the weight of it. So the vessel itself is quite heavy. So shipping it around and the logistics of that versus aluminum plastic is where its real downfall is. I'd kind of think, okay, so what about a biodegradable, plant-based, a plastic bottle? Could that be, it takes the elements of like, limited resources to actually manufacture, distribute, and things like that. When you think of energy consumption and all the emissions there, and what I came to realize, which was, honestly disappointing, is a, it's only compostable in just a few areas. But even beyond that, one of the things that's really problematic is it's easily confused with regular plastic. And so it ends up being recycled and it gets into the recycling stream and it pollutes the entire recycling stream. So then you can't even recover the plastic because the bioplastic is in there. And what we learned in that process is the plastic as a vessel overall is best, but recycled plastic addresses the waste issue. So the real issue that people have, that you typically hear people talking about is just single use, and then it ends up being it's more of a waste, a garbage issue, right? So does it end? Where's it ending up? In our landfills, in our waterways? It's not being recycled like glass and aluminum are. And if you rewind 40, 50 years ago, we also weren't really recycling aluminum or glass as we are now today. So efforts were put in place to start recycling those things, and now you have higher recycling rates. Similar can be done from a plastic standpoint. So we moved to 100% RPT. So that means we don't use any virgin plastic. We're using old plastic bottles. Those get ground up into pellets, and then we reblow them into a new bottle. So from a total carbon standpoint, retaining a vessel that is most efficient, and then B, and very importantly, addressing the waste issue. So now we create economic value by buying recycled plastic pellets to then reblow into new bottles. So we pay a premium. So we're spending millions more to make all of our packaging, but it's creating a market for that plastic. And now recyclers are investing a lot more capital to bring on more capability to recycle. And now more of that plastic is being recycled.
Thank you for answering that and going there. That's eye-opening. On the one of the other things that you've mentioned as you were kind of like turning around the business is around employee engagement. And given where June and I sit in the world of employee wellness and culture, I'm curious how you came into the business and sort of thought through changes in organizational structure and management in order to address those needs in the business and make it a better place to making Harmless Harvest even a better place to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, I'm a first generation college student. I grew up with very little, and my parents, they were divorced when I was very young, and so I, lived with two different families, and they worked paycheck to paycheck, right? They had jobs that they didn't enjoy, had not gotten an education, didn't really have the same level of choices. And one of the things how that impacted me is that I believe like people should, and I certainly, this is how I live. It's like, you got to love what you do. You got to you got to really enjoy what you're doing, because then it just doesn't feel like work in the same way. And so that is a bit of my philosophy on creating an organization where we do work hard and we have high expectations and results, but we also have fun. I often use the term family. Like I very much, and others talk about this too, like very much want, like think of everybody as our family. There are times when people go through challenges and we are all there to support them. And if they need to take time or they need to do something, like we're very supportive, and both in emotional as well as financial. And so just creating an environment that is nurturing, caring, empathetic, but yet, results oriented. To do that, we have a very candid kind of culture. I do believe in flexibility. So we were, flexible work home or in the office pre-COVID. Even though I typically do go in the office, I do work from home as well. Yesterday I worked from home. Today I'm in the office. Day before that I was in the office. It just depends on like what's going on for the day, or what I have going on. We all have lives outside of work, and so sometimes logistically it's easier to be home that day, such that right when you're done with your meetings, you can bolt off to do what you have to do. Um, I believe in development. Like giving people, if you're doing well, there's all sorts of ways to develop your career, and talking to people and understand like where do you want to be in 3, 5, 7, 10 years, like where are you marching towards, and then finding opportunities. I love win-win opportunities where they get maybe different experiences. So sometimes it's vertical growth, sometimes it's horizontal growth, and doing different things such that when they get to the next level, they're that much more effective. And oh, by the way, it's effective for us as a company because now you have people who really start to understand the adjacencies, and the recommendations and the work they do is that much better because it reflects the realities of the overall business. And so just really focusing on development, making sure we have the right kind of benefits. That was one of the things we did when I first started, is just, okay, what's the landscape of like what companies are doing for their employees? I don't want to under index. We may not be the highest, what I mean, at the very, very top, but we need to make sure that we are doing right by people. We do regular, assessments of like salaries and bonuses and stuff like that. And I firmly believe like there have been a number of instances where we've identified that somebody is under market, significantly under market in their compensation. They're not asking for it. It's not, you could just business as usual. But my philosophy is like, we need to, if we know something's out of line, we're going to proactively go to that person and say, we're adjusting your salary, based on what we're seeing. The market is higher, and we're going to adjust your salary and bring you to market. Because my philosophy is like, if you wait until they realize it or something, it, it well, first of all, just from a transactional standpoint, it's too late, right? One foot's out the door, like, but if you want to build trust and when you say you have people's best interests at heart, like you have to live that all the way through. And to me, we all do our best work. We all really operate as a team effectively when we're transparent, when everybody has everybody's best interest at heart. And so, yeah, I would say those are just a few of the philosophies that we have or that I have.
Thank you. Is there someone in particular? I know that you have a lot of amazing people on the team, and I could tell from seeing you all at Expo that you guys have a lot of positive energy and a good vibe. Is there anyone in particular that you've really enjoyed working with at Harmless Harvest? I know that's so
Well,
hard.
I'm not going to pick one person because I honestly I can't pick one person because I love the entire team. It is not that I want like anybody to know this because then they're going to try and poach everybody. It is seriously the most talented group of folks I've ever worked with in my career. So really, top to bottom. I mean, I'm talking at the entry level to the top, really good. But what I would say, there are people who, what has been really exciting is to work and develop them and give them new challenges and have them take on new responsibilities, and to see them grow and really flourish. And that, and sometimes in the beginning they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I should do that role, like me, and there's some funny stories there. But once they got into it, they're like, oh wow, this has actually been really good. I'm glad that you kind of made me do this, because I've learned so much, and now I'm much more effective in my overall, other roles as well.
Is there an area of either internal culture or just like outside product? Because it seems like things are going so well and you guys are so positioned so well with such a pure high quality product and such a great team. But are there any specific areas that you'd like to see you guys further improve in?
Yeah, I would say one area is better usage of the coconut husk. We're really
I've
good
always
at
thought about that.
developing Yeah, we're really good at developing food and beverage, right? Like we're all foodies. It's one thing that like, I think everybody kind of knows. If there's expense reporting, I may be cheap in a bunch of areas, but when it comes to food and beverage, like we need to facilitate and encourage good food and beverage. And so like I care less about what you spend on food and beverage. So if anybody's hearing that, that's I guess good and bad. But I would say the area that is tougher is how to use that husk. And that's used for like biofuel. We do composting, but like you can make furniture. There's like all sorts of stuff. And it's hard. Like that's not our area of expertise. Now we have some folks working on that, but it's working with other partners, finding the right partner. And often like I need somebody local, when you're processing 100 million coconuts, it's a lot of husks to use. And so how do you use up all that husk, and how do you encourage partners to invest, serious capital to be able to convert that husk into something that's quite usable? So, we earlier on, kind of midway through my tenure, we invested some dollars to uh, create, biofuel pellets that would then help run local. So you replace petroleum based fuel with the waste from our coconut. Um, that ended up being a total waste of money. So, when you think of bad decisions and, that didn't turn out, that would be one of them that I own. But the quest continues. Our goal, and we believe we will be able to use 95% of the coconut husks coming out of our factory by the end of the year. It is not been
Wow.
yeah, but that is like, it's a mixture between biofuel, certainly composting, but composting uses a small fraction of the overall husks. Um, Fiber, so kind of extracting the fiber and using that in like things like mattresses and whatnot. The one that we're really gung ho on, and we're trying to work. We have some promising leads, but will require some capital investment. Is biochar. So when you partially burn in a non-oxygen environment, you can fuel and power the factory, but you get your resulting outcome is it's like 2/3 carbon, and you use that in the farms and you sequester the carbon, and it's really good for the soil, and it does a really nice job of like holding more moisture, facilitating greater bacteria, like breadth of good healthy bacteria in the soil. So it's really good from an overall environment standpoint. It's actually profoundly good. And we can't use it all, but we could sell some of that. So that is something we're pretty excited about, and one of our areas of focus. But again, not always the easiest.
Yeah, I went to Israel years ago on a birthright trip, and one of the most interesting parts of the trip for me were going to this olive farm, um, who had developed a technology to repurpose the pits in order to make body care products and beauty products. And I found that so interesting, where they had now become, because they had developed this technology, there so many olives are grown in the Mediterranean area in the Middle East, and most people don't know what to do with the pits, and they were literally sending them to this farm and this business in order to then, like, paying the business to then give them the supply that then allows them to sell more product. I find those types of creative solutions to supply chain and innovation in product and CPG so fascinating. Anyways, we'll start again in terms of just next question, which was, Ben, you've been around the CPG world for a bit now, and also the natural food space. We just came from Expo West, which is one of the, I think, biggest natural foods expos. And as I looked around, there's plenty of innovation, but there's also plenty of products that aren't really the most natural, and are, whether it's full of gums and fillers or not necessarily produced in the right, the most environmentally friendly or the most natural or close to organic way. And I'm curious, like, as you've seen this space evolve, what are your general thoughts around business best practices and how the future of the industry, when you are selling such a product that is so close to y- its natural form of what you'd find out in nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there are a few principles I have. I would say one, just from a food standpoint, for me, staying closest to nature, or as nature intended, is most ideal. And um, I think we don't fully understand how impactful some either unnatural ingredients and chemicals and things like that, like really what they can do to our bodies long term. And I think, if we look at all of our past learnings, it seems like it's after 10, 15, 20 years, we start realizing, oh, maybe that isn't so good. Maybe it does increase the risk of cancer or whatever it may be. And I think, if there's anything that we should take from any of that, is just how do you stick as close to nature as possible, and how do you process in a way that hopefully has limited impact on the raw materials, right? Such that you can get the most nutrients out of it, and eating as fresh as possible or whole food as possible. So I would say that is just a general principle that I have. As you walk around the show, there's so much innovation, so many businesses and brands, and I think it's tough to make a business work. And you look around and on one hand you root for all these entrepreneurs, but it's a tough road ahead for them in any macroeconomic environment, let alone tougher macroeconomic environment right now. But you have to really, if you're starting something or you have a small business, is really think through, are you really addressing a need in the marketplace? Is there, like, does your product, is there a consumer need that's going unmet that you can really address? And are you really differentiated, or do you have some sort of insulation that's going to really protect you such that you can materially provide something better than anybody else? And so many products fall short of that, and that some of them may still succeed because they can out hustle, out market, out whatever another company, but it is tough as well.
Yeah, I've been lucky to work for when I worked in the natural foods industry, for some amazing brands that, similar to Harmless Harvest, had built brands from minimally processed ingredients, apple cider vinegar, pistachios, pomegranate juice, things like raw cacao and sacha inchi and other superfoods that were direct traded from Peru. And then some of my favorite brands that still use today, like, let's say, like a Vital Farms, focused on just eggs. But when you look, and then as I kind of take a step back and think of if I wanted to be an entrepreneur again, and maybe in the future in that space, it's just like, there's also sometimes it feels like a lack of products that you can basically resell in their most natural form. So people are sort of forced, if they want to get innovative and create a business, is like, no, I need to mix X and Y and Z. And in order to create a protein bar, or in order to create this, I can't just sell a nut and make a business like these businesses did in the last 10, 20, 30 years. So I find that whole kind of push and pull also interesting as well.
Well, I mean, let's face it. You know, I don't have a farm right behind. I don't live on a farm. I live in an urban environment. I have a small urban vegetable garden and some fruit trees and stuff, but like not enough to live off of. So you need products, and some of them you have to. I don't have time to make all my own bread or anything like that. So you do need those things, right? And I think you can have processed items, but how do you make sure that they're nutrient dense, and how do you so I think there are principles, and I think there are better ways to manufacture. And I think going to one of your comments and insights is, for me, I think variety of food is really important. It's really important for your microbiome, and I think for overall health, just to get the different types of micronutrients that our body needs. So I think variety is really important. So like having a wide range of types of ingredients, sometimes in a more processed form, let's say a cracker or bread, or in its raw sense of whether it's a nut or a fruit or a vegetable or something like that. But I think getting as much variety in, recognizing that we travel, we go to our office, we do things like that. You need things that are portable. You can't always have a head of lettuce, in your backpack.
Yeah. If you weren't working on Harmless Harvest, I know you're very embedded and integrated in the business. Is there any other area of the natural foods industry or CPG world that you would like, that excites you, especially outside of coconuts and coconut water and yogurt, plant-based yogurt?
Yeah, there are a lot of segments that interest me. I'm intrigued certainly about how technology, and how we bring healthier food to more communities and stuff like that. So I'm very
So like the Thrive
fascinated.
markets, or
Yeah,
produce boxes, and you leveraging technology in order to enable access.
yeah, that I don't necessarily agree with everything, and but I think there's just even different types of growing environments. And there's lots of philosophies on that, plant based, and like is it more, my mind is more plant inclusive. I myself am not vegan, but I certainly am more of a flexitarian, and I like to incorporate as many plant-based products in my overall diet. So, like I would say, in the world of CPG, I'm very interested in food and bev. I think I also have a healthy interest in pet, like what they're consuming. So I think that's interesting as well. I know, a little less about that, as far as like their dietary needs, but I have the basics. So it's, I think there's, I have I would say a wide range of interest when it comes to food and beverage.
Cool. I know we've gone a couple minutes over, Ben. I usually do a rapid fire, but I'm going to give you an opt out just because we've gone over time.
Totally up to you. I'm fine.
Do you have a couple minutes?
I do.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like to do a rapid fire just to give people an idea of who you are as a leader, just as a person outside of the business. So I'll get through that in about 5 minutes and then let you off to enjoy your Friday. So, a book that you've recommended the most, reread multiple times, or that has just left a lasting impact on you.
I'm going to disappoint you here, and I'm going to say Vince Flynn, fiction. I do a lot of, I would say, industry articles and things like that. But I would say when I'm reading longer format, I like something like Vince Flynn.
Got it. Okay. That's actually the second founder CEO that has given me a fiction book today. So I love that. I feel like someone like yourself kind of coming in as a CEO into Harmless Harvest would enjoy Bob Iger's book too, maybe if you haven't read it. I know Harmless Harvest isn't at Trader Joe's, at least not yet, or maybe white labeled. Um, uh, do you have a favorite product there or at another grocery store?
I mean, if I were to pick Trader Joe's, I would say maybe the chili crunch.
What is that?
Oh, it's got like chili flakes and then like garlic and onion
Oh,
in like an
it's like a
olive oil.
spice.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen that one.
I
Okay,
like that one.
cool. Purchase to under $200 that you made in the last 6 months that's provided the most value to you.
I am not an overly consumer. I grew up with very little, and I
Yeah,
used to go to the dump every Saturday for treasures or whatever. So it's just so weird. So I don't buy a lot of stuff. I'm kind of minimalist in that regard. So I would say maybe my AirPods.
got it. Okay. How about a signature dish or favorite thing to cook?
Oh, definitely soup. And it's weird because I hate waste and I don't throw
Okay.
anything away. And soup is a great way to use up everything.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. You mentioned like the food and grocery or like food expensing in the office. Like, what is like the most popular thing you're seeing um, when like whether it's you or other employees are sort of expensing for lunch in the East? I know you're in the East Bay.
Oh, okay. Expensing. Well, people aren't typically expensing lunch if they're in the office, but we've got a wide range of food that people like. Um, I would say one condiment that I did require in the office. Sometimes we have a few, things. I guess as CEO, I got a couple things that are just for me, but one of them that I think everybody likes is hot sauce. I always have.
Which one do you like?
I like any individual little company that comes up with hot sauces. I kind of like them all. I don't like them overly sweet. I don't like a super sweet. So sometimes there's like a mango whatever, and it's spicy. Sometimes those get a little too sweet for me, so I prefer it not to be sweet. But yeah,
Okay,
you name
cool.
it. Anything
I
from
have some
Tabasco all the way.
I have some recommendations for you on that side. What I'm gonna I almost want to skip over one item that's always stocked in your pantry because I feel like I know what it is.
Oh, it's definitely hot sauce. Oh, the
Okay.
other thing. Okay, I'll give you a different one. Mustard,
Oh wow.
like
Okay.
whole grain mustard. I love whole grain mustard.
Amazing. What's one thing that you're grateful for today?
Definitely my family.
Beautiful. And then, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Mm. You have to give in order to get. So how I put myself through college is I worked at an Italian gourmet restaurant, and Peppino was the owner, the founder. Great guy, and he said that to me once, and that stuck with me.
Where was this?
In Madison, Wisconsin, I went to the University of Wisconsin.
Okay, cool. And do you have a guilty pleasure?
Well, I love. I would say TV series like CIA kind of special ops series. I can binge them, and I try to watch just about any one of them I can. I'm watching the latest season of Jack Ryan right now.
Okay. I made a couple of recommendations I am totally unfamiliar with, so I got to do my research after this. Is there someone you look up to, and who do you look up to and why?
Um, I would say one more generically, I look up to anybody who really follows their passion, is doing what they love to do, right? If you can find a job that you're passionate about, I love it when I talk to somebody and they love what they're doing. Like whether you're a teacher or work an engineer or in a factory or whatever it may be, it can be a firefighter, police officer, CEO, whatever it may be. Like if you're doing what you love and it brings great passion and you are very proud of what you do, I think that is ultimately what I want people, that I'm proud of that when people can achieve that. If I had to pick somebody, I would say the founder of Patagonia. I think Patagonia, what they stand for and how he's embedded the DNA into that company is impressive. So
Have you met him,
no.
Yvonne? No,
Mm-mm.
he listens to this podcast. So Yvonne,
Ah,
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Uh,
Shout out for you.
do you have any favorite podcasts that you listen to, or any episodes that have left a lasting impact on you?
Besides this,
Yeah, of course.
um, I've enjoyed. This is another probably off the beaten path. Serial. So I love, like
Oh yeah,
sometimes that's
I haven't listened to
when we
that for
do
a while.
road trips as a family. We'll get into some of those. So that's always kind of fun as a family.
Okay, great. And then last two questions. Craziest or most out there thing you do to optimize your well-being?
I walk everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, I'll even
Even when
walk
it's
an
not
hour.
convenient.
Yeah. And if it's raining, I'll wear a rain jacket or something like that. But I don't know. It's part of my staying active and exercise. It means I can eat and drink as I choose. So I do a lot of walking. I've gotten a little bit of grief over the years at times about how far we sometimes walk for dinner or whatever it may be.
That's funny. And then what's your least favorite piece of health advice?
Oh, least favorite piece of health advice. Um, well, it's something I should do. Stretching. I don't do enough stretching.
Yeah,
My hamstrings are always like really tight. I feel like I'm one of those stereotypical
yeah, me
guys where I'm
too.
like struggling to touch my toes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Ben, this has been so much fun. Thank you for going a couple minutes over. Where can people learn more about you? Where can people find Harmless Harvest, and anything else you'd like to leave us with today before we sign off?
Yeah. I mean, Harmless Harvest, you can obviously go to our website, harmlessharvest.com, and, social channels and stuff like that. We're pretty active there. And in stores, you can find it. You can buy our products online. You can go to places like Whole Foods or any grocery store, mass, any natural store. So lots of choices, club stores, Costco and stuff like that. So lots of choices of where to buy us. As far as me, you can find me on LinkedIn if you ever want to connect, and certainly want to have questions, comments, or anything like that. I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you again for the time and work that you're doing, and diving into the practices and things that you've changed and improved, and also where you all are going, and excited to continue to see Harmless Harvest innovate and create, all the while eliminating the waste as well. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, John.